Doug King with Presence. I'm happy to be here today with Dr. Kurt Johnson, who is the co-author of the book, The Coming Interspiritual Age, and we've had a number of discussions about that. For those of you who have been following this very exciting interspiritual conversation, and we'd like to talk for just a couple of minutes today about the so what of it all. I mean, with anything you have, the question, is this just something that is a head issue, an academic issue, so to speak, or does it also engage the heart? And will it manifest itself in activism? And if it does manifest itself in activism, what is it that we should expect that interspirituality would begin to manifest? So I would appreciate it if maybe you could share some of your thoughts, Kurt, on the manifestation of this and what we should expect it to bring about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to background this, some of the other discussions that we've had have been about the history that brought us to this global level discussion, whether it's a global level discussion in science or in economics or sociology or religion, philosophy. All of these discussions have to do with what are the implications of a global civilization and a multicultural civilization, which seem inevitable given where we're going. Given where we're going, those things are going to happen either in a healthy way or they're going to happen in an unhealthy way. And so there are implications then to what arises when people start to think outside the box.
Yes.
And to think about the fading away of the old boundaries and the old barriers into a world where we're seeing each other as a very different type of organism, of interconnected whole and of brother and sister, and taking that seriously at the global level. So the question that really comes up then with interspirituality, which is this spirituality of the heart, spirituality of interconnection, spirituality of the sameness among who we are, no matter what our story is, or whether it's a Sufi story, an Islamic story, Jewish story, Christian story. What is it in our humanness together that is going to be implied as the thresholds that we need to move to as we mature in that way? So one of the things that we point out in the book is that if we looked at interspirituality as the deepest level of being a fully human person in the context of how any wisdom tradition would set the bar,
Yes.
the gold standard,
Yes.
we could almost say that interspirituality is being the best that Judaism could offer, the best that Islam could offer, the best that Buddhism could offer, Christianity could offer, at the level of the character of an individual. And the striving in that formation process or transformative process in people to be that, in that sense, interspirituality as moving to people of heart and people of character is obviously going to go on within the traditions themselves, because it's always been the goal of the traditions. If you actually read the base language and great books of any of these traditions, the gold standard or the bar for ethical and values-based behaviors is very, very similar. Now, what's happened, though, in the sense of the interspiritual and interfaith movements also growing across and outside the traditions, is as this understanding of mutuality, interconnectedness, and oneness has grown in the traditions, it's also invited people to step out across traditions, trans-traditionally, or even in their own communities where they may be using multiple resources, they may be using different spiritual practices, even different ceremonies, different ways of prayer and contemplation. They're taking advantage in that sense of all the resources of the traditions, like, all the meals that would be placed on a banquet table. So we can really expect that this more universal experience of spirituality is going to simultaneously go on within traditions and also outside and around traditions. And that is a natural convergence, that just as we saw when after the Renaissance we saw participatory governance and participatory economics developing, we saw societies that were mixtures of centralized authority, decentralized authority, centralized economics, decentralized economics, and those were evolving toward what was going to come out of that. So that's one part of it. Now the other part of it, though, is that this new type of humanity, or the new type of heart that's predicted by this new baseline of sharing together, is going to have a lot to say about structures. And one of the things that it's going to inevitably involve is a moving not completely away from hierarchy, but a mixing and a maturing of hierarchy in holarchy,
Yes.
in the horizontal, in the
Yes.
circle, in the sharing as equals.
Right.
And in a world that has to probably, inevitably, recognize that a world of elites and non-elites, or enfranchised and disenfranchised, simply not sustainable.
Right.
That type of a world will not be sustainable. Seeing that just as a pragmatic fact, we then have to say, okay guys, it's time now for every type of horizontal experiment imaginable. Let's work with circles, let's work with holons, let's work with what it means that we operate together in a different way. Now, one point about that's important is that it's just like when you're raising a child. Unless you've gone out and found a textbook, often there aren't that many textbooks.
Right.
So as we grow into this, it's really going to be inventing itself, as a word that you're fond of using, Doug, and co-creating. It's going to be developed in a way that we discover this together. But a big step is identifying that as a threshold that we want to try to meet.
And I think one of the exciting things we talked about just yesterday was with Ken Kitatani, who is with the group or spiritual practice of Tsukio Maikari. He has a long lineage with the United Nations in that his dad was one of the original members of United Nations in Japan after World War II. And we were having these same kinds of discussion where Ken was also talking about the importance of holonic groups synergizing together versus a hierarchical type setup.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, as Ken pointed out, what's interesting about the founder of Tsukio Maikari is that it was an individual who had an individual epiphany in the midst of the Holocaust of what had followed in World War II in Japan,
Yes.
and visioning that the only thing that could build community together was people building community together. It's almost like a no-brainer.
Yes.
So as we look at a world future that's by its nature multicultural, that's by its nature global, but so far has this incredible mixture of lenses, the Jewish lens, the Marxist-Leninist lens, the pragmatic academic reductionist lens. These are going to have to find a way not just to coexist, but they're going to have to find a way to positively synergize the type of world that we want to see in the future. And that means that people are going to have to be accessible.
Yes, and that in and of itself is what the evolution of spirit has been about since the beginning of time. And there has been, at certain times on the planet, an obvious conflicting of different ideas and an inability to work together. And it seems as though we're living at a time when the entire globe is awakening, and awakening to the fact that this is, as Kurt is saying, no longer a sustainable future for our planet, for our families, for our kids, for the grandchildren to come. This is no longer a sustainable way, and it's exciting to be part of this interspiritual way of thinking and to see the potential and the power of it, not because of who we are within the holon, but because of the power of spirit that is being manifested through us and through the holon. So thank you.
Yeah, and one final thing that we say on that is that we're entering now into a grand period of experimentation. Everything that we just said is laying out the challenge.
Yeah.
And we also noted that we don't have any textbooks that show us how to do this. So just as after the Renaissance, there was a period of centuries of experimentation with the new Gestalt. That's what we have to really expect now. We're going to go into an epoch of experimentation. Some of them will work, some of them won't work, some will work better than others, but they're going to be a natural part of how this evolves.
And the beauty of this will be that we're all doing it for the purpose of finding ways to come together. And so they won't be for the purpose of proving who's wrong or who's right. That wrong, right, saved, lost paradigm will not be the way that we experiment as we move this planet forward.
Amen.